Hey everybody, today I want to talk about the Beatles Past Masters compilation, specifically the vinyl pressings that I have in my collection. This is an album that I think gets overlooked nowadays just because the Red and the Blue album, they obviously got remastered and remixed, so that compilation has been getting a little bit more love recently. But I really like Past Masters Volume 1 and 2, so I wanted to talk about that a little bit in this video today, talk about these pressings I have in my collection, which one I prefer to listen to, and just a little bit of a backstory on Past Masters. So, Past Masters was first released in 1988. It was to coincide with the Beatles' UK albums being released on CD for the very first time. And Past Masters Volume 1 and 2, it's made up of the A-sides and the B-sides of their UK singles, along with some EP tracks and some just miscellaneous tracks that were not present on their original UK albums. So all of those, and there are some obviously essential songs on here that they needed to put in an album when they were releasing all the CDs. So that's why you have Past Masters Volume 1 and 2. This happens to be a US pressing that was released in 1988. There's the front cover. There's the back. It was released on Capitol Records, and it is a gatefold. My gatefold has a bit of water damage, unfortunately. Doesn't affect the records, but it does affect the inside of the gatefold, which is too bad, but not the end of the world. And it's on the Capitol purple label. And these were cut by Wally at Capitol Records. I talk a lot about Wally on my channel. Wally cut a lot of the Beatles' US albums from like the mid 70s until like the late 80s, and he always did, in my opinion, a pretty good job. A lot of my favorite of the Beatles US pressings are cut by Wally. He's kind of like the US equivalent of Harry T. Moss. Obviously I think Harry T. Moss did a much better job. The UK pressings were just light years better most of the time than the US pressings. But for this particular US pressing, Wally did the cutting. I won't bother showing you the other record because it looks exactly the same. So these were cut from a digital source, of course, because this has an equivalent, CD equivalent, of course, that was released with the Beatles CDs in the late 80s, in 87 and 88, but I believe Past Masters was the last CD released in 1988. And these were digitally remastered by George Martin at Abbey Road. And, you know, they're not horrible is what I'll say. They lack a little bit of life. That's like the main problem I feel with this compilation. But really, if you want just clean, pleasant to listen to, nothing special, but just very clean is how I describe it, versions of these amazing Beatles songs. The original Past Masters is a very fine collection of their material. I have not ever heard a UK pressing of Past Masters. I'd be curious to know in the comments below if any of you own a UK pressing of Past Masters on vinyl, and how it sounds to you. This one took me a long time to track down. Past Masters it's a hard one to find on vinyl just because when this was released, the CDs were what everybody wanted in the late 80s. People already had vinyl in their collection. They were now trying to acquire the CD versions of the Beatles albums. So all the vinyl releases, and there were vinyl releases that coincided with the CDs, by the way, that used the digital remasters. A lot of those kind of got overlooked because that's just not what people wanted at that time. So because of that, these are harder to come by. This one I found, I think I found it online on eBay about a year and a half ago, maybe 2 years ago. So I've had it for a while in my collection, and you know, I actually listened to it more than I thought I would. It's a nice record to put on and just have a record on in the background, because each side has like 9 or 10 songs per side. So it's nice to not have to get up and turn the record over. That being said, of course, when you put too many songs per side on a record, the volume isn't quite as loud, and so, you know, in later pressings you can kind of get away with more tracks per side, but generally speaking, you don't want to overload each side with too many songs. But This one sounds fine. It's nothing special, but it definitely sounds fine. So this is the 1988 Past Masters compilation. Then, of course, in 2009, they remastered all of the Beatles material again. And then later on in 2012, I believe, they released all those remasters on vinyl. And they came out with Past Masters. And if you'll notice, it no longer says, like the 88 version, volumes 1 and 2. It now just says Past Masters. And there's the front, and there's the back. It's the exact same track listing, I must emphasize. And this is also a gatefold, but it's a different gatefold photo. Very, very cool shot of the Beatles. This particular pressing comes from my box set, the black box set that I've talked about before. And you do get a little bit of a booklet, which is kind of nice. Cool photo of the Beatles there. And then you get a little essay about each of the tracks inside here. It's a new essay written by Kevin Howlett, of course, because he is the new Beatles, I guess the Beatles expert. And I should say that the very first Past Masters, the 88 version, was all the liner notes were done by Mark Lewison. And Mark Lewison, of course, is just, he's my favorite Beatles historian, author, expert, whatever you want to call it. He's just written some amazing, amazing books. The Beatles Recording Sessions, he wrote that book. He wrote Tune In. He's working on 3 different volumes of the Beatles history. Just an amazing, amazing guy. He kind of fell out of favor with the Beatles camp after like the anthology albums, it seems like. I don't know what exactly happened, as I almost dropped the record. I don't know what exactly happened, but he just didn't seem to work on any more of their projects. The last project that he worked on that I was aware of was Paul McCartney's Wingspan book and compilation album that came out. But ever since then, he's been doing his own projects, of course. But he did do the liner notes for the original Past Masters Volumes 1 and 2. But this Past Masters, released in 2012, it has liner notes by Kevin Howlett, like I mentioned. So that's the booklet in that, which is very nice to have. And the records are on thick 180 gram, I would guess it's 180 gram vinyl. They reproduced the Parlophone black and yellow label, of course. Side 2. And then for the second record, they reproduce, as I'm sure you can guess, the Apple label in a black sleeve. So very, very nice. And of course, these 2009 digital remasters, I've talked about these a lot, and these 2012 pressings of those remasters, they're not my favorite of the Beatles pressings by any means. There's a lot of problems. You know, the bass is kind of overdone. It's, of course, all sourced from a digital source. And it just doesn't sound as warm and as exciting and as magical as those original amazing pressings that we all talk about all the time, like the original UK pressings, the mid-70s UK pressings, some of the mono pressings, of course, from the 60s. Just doesn't compare to those. That being said, it's a nice compilation. They do sound really, really good. I think they're a big improvement over the original Past Masters album, in my opinion. I'm going to get digital versions of the Beatles albums on vinyl. I suppose I want them to be as cleaned up and as made to sound as good as possible for what they are of this time period, which was to bring the Beatles music, I guess, into the present, right? That's not all for a lot of people, of course, and I generally want to hear the Beatles as they were intended to be heard, with that warm analog sound of the 1960s. But this is, you can't go wrong really with this compilation, I gotta say. If someone's new to the Beatles and this is the first album that they get, it's a home run already. The songs on here are just obviously amazing. I don't need to tell you that. It's a good starting point for any Beatles fan, and it's clean. The vinyl is in good quality. All my pressings in my box set, by the way, I know a lot of people have problems. All of mine were absolutely fine, had no problems really whatsoever. So Past Masters, the 2012 version, it's definitely fine. And you get most of the songs on here are in stereo. I think the first like 4 songs, maybe 5 songs, are in mono. Something like that, maybe 3 songs. Anyway, Past Masters. Now, for my favorite version of Past Masters, it's not called Past Masters, but it really is Past Masters. The Beatles Mono Masters. Now, this is a different track listing up to a point. The first, let's see, side 1, 2, and 3 are basically the exact same as Past Masters. Then it starts to deviate. You get side 4, which is like Lady Madonna, Inner Light, and Hey Jude, Revolution. Actually, I'm wrong. Those are also the same as Past Masters, of course. Then it's with side 5 that things start to change. You get Only Northern Song altogether now, Hey Bulldog, It's All Too Much. So the Yellow Submarine songs. And of course, I probably should have mentioned this before, but I'm sure you all are aware of it. These are all in mono. These are the original mono mixes. And the other really important thing about this, these are all analog. These were cut with an all analog signal from the original master tapes, and they sound absolutely phenomenal. I've talked about this before. This is the way I want to hear these songs from the Past Masters compilation. They're so warm, they're so present, they are just absolutely magical. And if you can get your hands on this compilation, and it is still out there, I see it online, it's kind of expensive. You're probably going to have to pay upwards between like $80 to $100, I think is what I've generally seen these for online. But it's worth it. You get 3 records, and I'll show you the records. Now my copy here, it has a bit of damage on the back, as you can see, a little bit of damage there. And I do have a piece of cardboard in the middle here, which I'll try to show you if I can, to try to like keep the integrity of the gatefold a little bit more solid, just because it's a tri-fold gatefold, I guess is what they call it. And it is a very, very cool looking gatefold. Let me see if I can do this without causing any additional damage to this. Okay, I did it. There we go. Very, very cool gatefold. Again, you get essays written by Kevin Howlett. And I think they're pretty much the same as the original his Past Masters essay that he wrote in 2012. This came out in 2014. I think they're pretty much the same, with maybe a little bit of extra kind of sprinkled in as far as the mono aspect of this compilation. But let me show you the discs here. And I kept the original little sticker there. People in one of my last videos where they asked me, how do you manage to keep all the hype stickers? So anytime I get a new record, doesn't matter if it's Beatles or anybody, I always try to carefully pull off the hype stickers from the shrink wrap. It's pretty easy to do if you just take your time and you just slowly peel them off. They come off with different degrees of success. But generally speaking, they're pretty easy to do. You just kind of pull them off slowly. They come off. I didn't stick them on to maybe a record shelf, just the corner of it, just so that to hang out. Then I take it out and I immediately stick it on one of the inner sleeves if there's room there, if there's no writing or photo on the inner sleeve. So then I can always have it. So now when I take this out, I see the original hype sticker and it's a cool thing to look at. So anyway, that's a little side note on the hype stickers. Here is the first side of the first disc. Cool reproduction of the Apple label. Side 2. And again, these really do sound excellent. I think it's an essential part of anyone's collection. If you're serious about the Beatles, of course. I'm sure most of you are, or if you're watching this. And I think the second disc is the exact same. Yeah, it is. Not going to bother pulling that out. They're all the Apple label. But again, you get 3 records in here, and it's really cool to get the Yellow Submarine songs on this because these are, well, all these, of course, are the mono mixes, which are unique mixes. But it's the Yellow Submarine mono mixes on here were brand new to this compilation. So very, very cool. And you get the long version of not Altogether now. Nobody wants that. The long version of It's All Too Much is on this compilation, which is very, very cool. You get an extra verse. And that's just always been one of my favorite George Harrison Beatles psychedelic songs. So it just sounds great. And this is the version I want to listen to when it comes to the Past Masters compilation album. And like I said earlier, I think this is kind of overlooked now with the Red and the Blue albums that have come out with the remixes, remasters of those. But I really do think Past Masters is just a great, great compilation. And these 3 pressings I have in my collection, I'm very, very glad to have. I'd love to know in the comments below what pressings you have of Past Masters in your collection. Again, I am interested to know what the original UK pressing from 1988 sounds like. I would venture to guess that it sounds pretty close to this US pressing, just because it's from a digital source. Anyway, that's it for now. Hope you enjoyed this video about Past Masters, and more videos to come. Take care and bye for now.